Welcome to Web Development Lesson 1.5. In this lesson, we're going to cover new HTML elements that will serve as containers for other HTML elements. This is needed in order to progress from just knowing how to put elements on a page to actual web design. In this, we're going to discuss how elements are inherently either inline or block, and also talk about a method for designing a website before you even code it. So let's get to it. So the two elements we're going to talk about today are the div and the span. These are both containers. One is a block container, the other one's an inline container. So let's demonstrate this. So this one's the block container. And span is the inline container. Now, what exactly does that mean? It's going to make more sense if we put some text or elements around this. So I'll put text 1 here. Let's put text 2 here. And let's put text 3 here. And let's see what it does. So what you'll notice that with text 1, well, text 1 is where it is the first thing on the web page. And then we have the block container, the div. And then look at what happens to text 2. Text 2 goes down to the next line. A block container takes up the entire space of a web page. So it automatically will break the next element down to the next line. A span's different though. A span does not take up the whole width of the web page. If you kind of, not to use the word in its own definition, but a span simply spans the amount of area it needs to include the text. So you might ask, well, how is this useful? Both of these elements become more useful when you start going into something called web design, actually designing a page, laying things out, where you may need to define an area on a page that's going to have something special for you. So for that, a span is key, something small. A div is meant more to grab a whole section. And I have a couple of slides here in a little bit that hopefully will solidify the difference between a div and a span. I will tell you, more times than not, you're going to end up working with a div to design the layout of your website. But before we move on to that, let's cover the fact that all elements are inherently either inline or block. So let's talk about another common element, a heading. Oh my God, I can't type. And let's put text 3 here, or text 4. And let's go ahead and add another one. Let's add a couple more. img source, and I'm just going to give it a fake name. And let's put text 5. All right, so let's kind of review some things that we're looking at here. So we've added the H1. And what you'll notice is that the very next line, the text 4, goes down. That's because a heading is a block element. It's not a container. We wouldn't call this a container. Heading has special meaning. But it is a block element, which means similar to the div, it's going to break the next piece of HTML that follows. Now an image is not. Notice, now again, you've seen the broken image because I actually don't have an image called fake PNG. But an image is an inline element. So an image acts the same way as a span. So you've actually been working with block and inline elements since the very beginning. What these two do, the block and the span, is that these elements don't bring anything else special with them. They're simply containers. unlike an H1, which it is a block element, but you get some other stuff to go with it. You get the bigger letters, the bold type. An image, obviously it's something else. I mean, it's not just it's not even a container at all because it doesn't have a closing tag to go with it. But again, each of these have special meaning that goes with that element. Div and a span don't. They're strictly meant to hold other elements. So you might say, okay, well, how do we use this in web development? So typically, much like a movie or a comic book, before any real work gets done, the artists, the directors, the producers, they sketch out each scene. And guess what? A web developer does the same thing. And this is what's called a wireframe. So what you'll see here is a rough sketch of, where do you want things? So I might want a picture here, an H1 here, an H3, a couple of links, another H3, another picture, another link, an H3, a paragraph. Again, this is also the same thing that a newspaper editor or a magazine editor might go through when they lay out pages in their magazines. So once you have the sketch, the idea is that you can take it, once everybody's agreed on the layout, and actually code it, write it. And this can eventually become something like this, where the sketch becomes a live website. So let's practice that technique. And I have a couple of pictures for us to practice with. So if you allow me, I'm just going to delete all this code. Now, delete the script too. And let's see if I can manage to put this all on the page at the same time. All right, so here's a mini sketch. So the idea is to take this sketch and actually transfer it into HTML. So anytime you see a square box, that's a div. It's a container. They're telling you we're containing the other HTML. So let's go ahead and put div. And I would also suggest that when you open a div, you automatically close it. And now it's just standard practice. So we can see here, heading 3. So let's put in H3. And we don't actually have to fill it with anything yet because it's all about just laying out the page to get a feel for what it looks like. Next thing they want is an image. So let's do image source. And I don't keep it too creative. I just put face PNG. Now it is going to come up as a broken link. I don't have a face picture here. But again, the purpose is not necessarily to get it to look like this. It's more of a, get a feel for what the layout will look like. And the wavy lines designate a paragraph. So let's just put blah, blah. Let's put a break in here so it kind of feels like a paragraph. Blah, blah. And then let's close out the paragraph. So one of the things you're going to start noticing is that with containers, your indentation is going to be a big part. Now, does a browser care? No. You could write your whole HTML in one line. But when it comes to developing, these are those things that you want to start practicing so it becomes easier for you to troubleshoot your website later on. So let's see what this looks like. So I'm going to run it on this side. And there it is. Now, does it look exactly the same? No, but it's the idea that we've identified an area for a heading, heading 3, an area for a picture, and our paragraph. So let's try one more. This one's slightly different, not by much though. We can shrink this down a little bit. And let's do this in a separate area. So again, you see the box. First thing that should come to mind is ding, ding, ding. That's a container. Let's put a div. And what's the first thing we see? We see an image, source equals, we'll do the same thing, face.png. Again, it's going to give us the broken link, but that's okay. And now let's add some hyperlinks. just put link 1. Let's close it. Space there. And we'll do a little copy and paste just to save ourselves a little bit of time for link 2 and link 3. And let's see what it looks like. Let's run it again. Okay, so here is our HTML that represents this. Now, is it exactly like that? Again, it's not about looking exactly like the sketch. It's about identifying the elements and roughly laying them out on the page the way we want it to look in real life. Once it gets filled in with the proper information, the proper pictures, the proper links. And for that, we're going to need to use, in addition to completing the HTML, we need to use CSS to actually style the page. But again, before we could style anything, we got to get the elements on the page in their proper spots. So let's go back to our presentation. And in this video, we covered 2 new elements called the div and the span that can be used to contain other elements. All elements inherently are either block elements, which means they take the whole width of the page, or an inline element, which means that they kind of interact with the other elements without necessarily skipping them down to the next line after they're done. Prior to any coding, now that we're moving into design, we have to lay our stuff out. And we use this with a tool called a wireframe, which is just a rough sketch of how we want things laid out on a page. So hopefully you're excited to start creating your website. Enjoy.